Welcome, everybody, to the Dr. Leadership Lounge, where we have conversations with business leaders from all walks of life about how and why they are successful. Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Dr. Leadership Podcast. Hope you're having a great day. Today, you're joining us on the Leadership Lounge, and I am extremely excited about this conversation today. Kenneth Correa is head of strategy at 80/20 Marketing. He's a professor at Brazil's leading business school, FGV, and an international speaker. He has more than 150 engagements, including a couple TEDx talks. He's a specialist in innovation and emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, metaverse, and data, with 15-plus experiences in marketing and technology projects for companies which are leaders in their verticals, names you've heard of. This is an exciting time for me, Kenneth, because AI is the leading thing out in the world. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Brent. It's great to be here. I'm doing fine. Of course, AI is the topic everybody's talking about. Again,
That's right.
We have a little hype on it. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I didn't say anything. You have a little hype on it, you said.
Yeah, so everybody's talking about it. With the hype, they think it's going to cure cancer and solve world hunger. And it's not all that, but I'm pretty sure it's worth talking about.
That's awesome. And for those of you wondering how broad the show has gotten, Kenneth is joining us from Sao Palo, Brazil, where it's winter, and he was complaining about the cold a little bit here a minute ago to a guy from Iowa. So it's not terrible. It's under 50 degrees there, though, so it's kind of world-ending cold down in Brazil today. But welcome to the show.
Definitely.
Oh,
Thank you.
So, one of the things, and I am very excited about this because AI is everywhere, as you stated, and, big press conferences where statements were made about curing cancer and medical results and testing, and there's all sorts of positives that are going to come from this, of course, because it's fast and it can source from all sorts of data points, but it's only as good as the data set it's looking at, I believe. But in this grand world, how did you get to the AI piece of your business? I mean, you're founder of a couple companies. You're leading the strategy at 80/20. How did you get to where you are today?
All right. So I was born in Midwest Brazil. That's probably a warmer version of Iowa down here in the
Rural,
South American
yeah.
continent. Right. And so I've grown up in a rural area, but something happened when I was 6 that I got in touch with a computer, and I started typing before I learned how to write.
Funny.
Typing is writing, but
Yeah.
I touched a keyboard before I was using notebooks and all that. So that hit me, and I went on the other way around, going through technology in the early days of Microsoft DOS, and then Windows, the first versions, PCs, and went to school to study business management. So that's my background.
Okay.
Technical background, officially is in business management, but always I had this touch with technology. Of course, since the mid-90s, after the internet came along, technologies or the digitalization is a part of doing business at all.
Yep.
So I created this company, 80/20 Marketing, some 15, 16 years ago, where we are developing these technology solutions, which are different. For example, today we're talking about a network of AI agents working to solve workflows in companies.
Mm-hmm.
But some 16 years ago was creating websites and doing SEO to better position those websites in Google.
Mm-hmm.
After that, a little bit of social media, creating content for companies. So our work, what we do and how we do it, has been a moving target. And I think that's the reality when you work with emerging technologies. Something new is always
Leading edge all the time. Yes. So search engine optimization leads to the next thing that leads to AI that'll lead to the next, and so on and so forth. My background's in technology as well, not on the same kind of, I don't want to say level, but not exactly the same as you, but in the printing and data management side of it. So I've messed with a lot of data over my lifetime as well, and that's what I liked about it. It was constantly changing, and something always new to learn, right? I think that's something that all of us need to understand, is that your learning's never done. And AI is, well, let me ask the question. Do you think AI is going to replace people learning? Is it going to make us all for lack of a better term, dumber and just more reliant on the phone in our hand or the computer models? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think we have two ways to approach that. You could argue that when we started using the calculator, we somehow got a little bit worse in doing numbers by head.
Yep.
I can agree to that. But jumping from that to we're getting number, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because there's so much to learn, so many problems to be solved in every area of life. I think we're going to get, and we have been getting, more and more sophisticated into what do we really need to learn. So we're not having to remember specific formulas to doing math, but now we're solving some onion-like problems, like multiple layers that interact with each other. And with the use of AI, I think we're now able, and this is not the future tense, I'm talking about the current reality, the present state right now. We are able to solve more complex problems because we have this, I'll call it a research buddy.
Yeah.
For example,
That's a great terminology, research
right.
buddy.
That's the idea. I was talking to an uncle of mine, and he's a gastroenterologist. So he's talking about the intestine and all the advancements related to the intestine, actually to our findings about the intestine. And I'm very curious about that. And I want to understand what is new, what is different. For example, we have this GLP-1.
The drug weight loss.
Wegovy, of course. And those are all related to the intestines and how it controls our urge to eat and all that. So I made a Google Gemini deep research in like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Google went after 270 different websites and scientific papers, mashed it all up in a big and long text. I got that piece of text, copy and paste that at Notebook LM, which is a different learning tool. We can talk about that as well. And it created a podcast like we're doing right now, a podcast episode about the recent finding related to the intestine. So I think this speeds up the process of learning in a way that wasn't possible before. I don't think we're getting number. I think we're getting hell lot smarter. That's how I look at it.
That's awesome to put it in that perspective. And like I said, I kind of struggle. That's a bad term. Maybe so more reliant, right, on that help or that buddy, which is great because not any single person can know it all, right? That's why we have expertise and specialization, et cetera. But it just allows so much data to be crunched so fast. And especially, you're talking about your uncle in the healthcare environment. Many times you need answers very quick because it's in an emergency type situation when you're fighting cancers and you're fighting diseases and you're fighting, maybe it's accidents, whatever, to be able to source all that information to help guide you toward higher probability solution sets, I think is very, very solid. It's
definitely, Brent. And sorry to interrupt you, but on the medicine and healthcare side, there is always this discussion about AI taking over doctors, AI taking over nurses, and I don't think that's the right way to approach it because my wife, as an endocrinologist, and we're going to California tomorrow for her big annual endocrinology meeting. Yes, I'm flying all the way from Sao Paulo to Los Angeles.
Be careful.
And then, all right. Thank you for the heads up. And she started using AI as a part of her clinical practice. So as she starts talking to the patient, she turns on a recorder and, of course, tells the patient that it's being recorded, and she gets an approval by the patient to do that and all that. And now she's giving the patient a lot of more attention. She's looking into the patient's eye at all the time. She can focus on the physical tasks that she has to do, whatever related to the disease. And then after she finishes the session, the clinical session, she will get that recording. It will be transcribed automatically. She's using a hardware device called Cloud AI. So it creates a transcript of the session. Then she already has a prompt that not only gets a shorter version of that, a briefer version of that session, and highlights the important topics so she can save that into the patient's medical history. Because before that, she was having to
It's all
type at
manual.
all times.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, manual. The consultation will take a longer time. She would have to take her eyes off the patient and look to the screen of the computer. She's not doing that anymore. And when she finishes that, puts that into the patient's medical history, she also gets a follow-up message that she can send, short text message or WhatsApp message, to that very patient. And she's telling me, reporting that she's getting more. The patients are adhering more to the treatments because now they have like this personalized craft message,
Yeah.
all based on whatever they talk about throughout the 1 hour, an hour and a half consultation.
It's a great point and a great reference on that because, one of the biggest complaints of doctors, lines at clinics and it's taking longer to be seen, is the administrative tasks that take them away from patient care. And it's so nice to hear that your wife's able to really truly focus on the patient. In the United States, we face a lot of problems where for every 15, this was from my physician told me, for every 15 minutes he spends in front of a patient, it requires an hour and a half of administrative tasks on the back end. Well, you start running, that's why you have so many administrators in hospitals instead of doctors and nurses, is because they're just trying to file paperwork and they're trying to cover themselves from a litigation prevention standpoint and to make sure, we're a very litigious country, unfortunately, and to try to avoid those things. And the government has put so many regulations over the top that it really has pulled from patient care. So for AI to be able to help your wife and other physicians and doctors and specialists to spend more quality time with the patients, that's a big win for everyone.
Yeah, and it sounds a lot better than that negative view of technology is going to take everyone's
That's right.
jobs.
Yeah,
Which
and
is,
I
of
think
course, nothing new under the sun, right?
that's right. I think that people fear what they don't understand, right? And that's why I was excited about this episode is to help. I'm not fearful of it. I understand it. I understand the value of it to somewhat. I'm not saying the expert in any stretch of the imagination, but I think that utilizing it in the appropriate manner, it's like the internet. When it's utilized in the appropriate manner, it's a wonderful tool. Are there dark corners of the internet? Absolutely. Humankind makes sure that that's always going to kind of be there, but there's no doubt that this technology is going to be a benefit to the populace over time. So you
Yes,
also,
and when I speak about it, I'm speaking all around it. You mentioned my TEDx events,
yes,
and I went to Iceland, England, India twice, and what I'm trying to get people to do is not exactly to only listen to the specialist, but the most specific next step that I give to people when I talk to them is you got to put your hands on it. You got to get your hands dirty because that's how you're really able to assess all the possibilities of how you can implement that into your workflow, everyday tasks, and it's really making use of it. Because, or else you only get other people's opinions and insight, but not really have the possibility to check the pulse, and see really how you could use it.
yeah. So that really goes to that from tool to teammate, right? Is you say get your hands dirty. You don't know what value it can bring until you kind of you got to engage with it, right? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, definitely. For example, if you use ChatGPT, which is the most popular AI assistant around, or you can use Google's Gemini. China has released DeepSeek. All of those AI assistants have different details, but the overall use of them is is the same. So what I recommend people is you can get your ChatGPT, you can type questions and you can read answers, but you can also use your phone's camera. So maybe it's Sunday night, you're at home, and you're not in the mood of doing much cooking, but you gotta eat. So you can take a picture of your refrigerator and say, okay, ChatGPT, based on this picture, what is the fastest thing that I could cook
You're
for this
kidding
Sunday
me.
night?
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That'll be
So
used
that's a
probably later
great,
this week.
it's a personal fun use of it, but actually this will uh, show it to you that you're possible to make use of the camera. So now not only ChatGPT can hear you or read your messages, but whatever you type to it, but it can also look at what you're seeing. So that's how powerful the tool has gotten in the past months.
So you just basically go into the ChatGPT application, and there's a camera image or something that you can take a picture and then ask a question following the picture. Is that the basic operation of it?
Exactly. As easy as it would be for you to send a message to somebody on WhatsApp. You can send a picture, you can send
Man,
audio, or you can type a message. It's the very same thing with ChatGPT.
that's just crazy. It is just, as you get older, my parents, the VCR was very awe-inspiring, right? To be able to put a video in and play it. They couldn't set the clock. It's kind of an old joke, but they didn't know how to set the time on the VCR. They knew how to hit play and fast forward, and that was leading edge technology. And now we're so much further forward. Technology is exponentially faster than it used to be, and it can be very intimidating. And I think people just need to kind of take a deep breath. You're very calming about it. I love the conversation because it gives me a little bit more peace of mind. But a lot of people are scared of what they don't understand, right? So you're
Yeah. And again, to your earlier point, are we getting dumber because we don't have to read the VCR manual anymore?
no, you're right.
That
That's right. It's a good
booklet you got
example.
to read. Right, perfect. That's the kind of a point of view shift that I like to give to the topic. Because again, can you look at the darker side as you mentioned? Definitely. Of course, there are a lot of bad news. But what I have been seeing, driving and flying around every other continent out there, is people are able to use it as a teammate, as you mentioned, so you can accelerate the manual part of your everyday job. You can focus on whatever matters most regarding your profession or whatever you do at work. And then you got extra time. So the general idea is you're free, you're available to
It's
use your
empowering.
time
It's
for whatever
empowering.
fits.
Yeah, it's empowering.
Empowering. Love it. Yeah.
So great concepts. Tell me a little bit about, you've written a book, Cognitive Organizations. It was published by MIT, and I think that was in the early 2020s, if I remember right. Tell us a little bit about your book, Cognitive Organizations.
All right, let me tell you about it. Actually, it was a lot sooner than that. It was published in September 24. So really
Gotcha.
just
Real
less than a
recent.
year
I couldn't
ago.
see the last digit on my notes, so 2024. So hot off the
Yes, all right.
press.
So yes, and I was of course all connected to the AI LLM, the large language models revolution, this AI assistants and ChatGPT and all that. But early in 24, and this is important part of it, I got in touch with the idea of AI agents. And when I started, again, getting my hands dirty, using the agents in my own company, 80/20 Marketing, that's when I started to see the benefits of not only having an assistant, the teammate, the buddy, but now an autonomous agent that after I teach it how to read a piece of document and extract values information out of that, or create an image based on input that I got from the past marketing campaign, for example. Now those agents are acting by themselves. Again, not Terminator 2 style. It's not going to kill all the crew like 2001 Space
It'll be
Odyssey,
back.
right?
Yeah.
Just to get that out of the way. But they are doing some work by itself. And then I said, okay, I think my org chart is got to look somewhat different because now I have intelligent agents, those being the human beings, though they are intelligent as well, at least most of them, and AI agents on the very same org chart. And then after seeing that benefit for my own company and then creating some prototypes and MVPs proof of concepts for other companies, I said, I think this is something big. I think now on my area, remember my technical background is management. So on the management side, I think it's a new way to look at companies. And on the management theory side, we have been a little bit thirsty for that for the past 20, 25 years, because the last major change in management theory was the agile revolution back in 2001.
Right.
So that's why I call it the cognitive organization. It's an organization powered by the intelligent agents, human and AI.
So when you, just for a baseline for people too, when we say an AI agent, for the basic people that just, even for me, what is that referring to? Is that just a term used for the different AI platforms or applications you can use, or what does AI agent mean?
Let's go with that. It's still not a very pacified concept. So if you hear Google talking about an AI agent, Google will use a different definition than Salesforce, for example, who thinks an AI agent is an agent that talks to a customer, because of course they are a customer service company. They have customer service agents.
Yep.
They call it an agent as well. So still not very, very well defined. But the way I like to define an agent as being different from an assistant is that an agent can act autonomously. You can give it a task and it will do that task by itself. Different from ChatGPT, which is an assistant, because you got to ask ChatGPT, when did Columbus discover America? And it will reply it back to you.
And you got to give it the next question and then the next question, instead of it just kind of processing on through the data.
Yep. So when you get an assistant like ChatGPT and put it as a part of a workflow in a company, in a business, that's when an assistant can become an agent, if you give it the power of working by itself, to the autonomous part of it.
Gotcha. Now, there's also a couple other concepts. There's generative AI, and then what's the other? There's another type of AI as well. Explain that to us a little bit.
Yeah, sure, of course, great. Again, artificial intelligence, the original concept, was first said in New Hampshire back in 1956.
Wow.
So it's almost 70 years old, right? That's how far we can get back to humans wanting computers to do whatever we do. That's why it's called artificial, because it's a simulation. It's trying to copy, to mimic how humans solve problems. So that's, again, 1950s. Computers weren't as good as they are right now. Some theories were developed. Software was created. But the really special change was around 2010. So this is way forward in the future, because that's when GPUs, the graphic processor units.
Yep.
Remember, the computer has the CPU. So
it was for video gaming and being able to do graphics at very high speed and high quality.
Yeah, but somebody found out by testing that the GPUs were also very good as to make simultaneous calculations. So you can get, if you need to solve a very complex problem regarding data, for example, the GPU will process that a lot faster. I'm talking about thousands and thousands of orders of magnitude faster. So that's what spiked this recent AI revolution. But all that, Brent, I like to put it on what I call the classical AI.
Okay.
Classical AI, because since the 1950s, of course, we have been doing some weather forecasting, market fluctuations and price movements. We're making predictions regarding logistics, like Google Maps will tell you the shortest route between points A and B. This is all part of what I like to call the classical AI.
Okay.
What do you need to work with classical AI? You need powerful computers. You need an abundance of data, and you need a data scientist or statistician or mathematician or a specialist to work with it.
Okay.
But since 2017, there's this new branch called the generative artificial intelligence. And this branch of Gen AI, that's the shortened version of it, is a version of AI where you don't need the data scientist, you don't need the abundance of data, because those models were created on top on virtually every piece of high quality content out there. We're talking about books, we're talking about websites, we're talking about encyclopedias, we're talking about a lot of documents from the United Nations and libraries of the world. You have meeting transcripts. Everything was fed in this big, I'm talking about really big, large language models, more than 100 billion documents used on the training of those models.
Wow.
And we could argue, that the abundance of data was already used at this earlier part of the process. And now, November 30th, 2022, the last day of November in 2022, that's when ChatGPT was launched. Not the first large language model, but the first product readily available for free, so the world can use generative AI at the point of their fingers. In 5 days, ChatGPT got 1 million users. In 5 months, 100 million users.
There's never been anything grow that fast.
Yeah. And as of right, it's the fastest growing technology in the history of mankind. And now, 2.5 years into the revolution, that's like how I like to call it.
It is. Yeah.
800 million people use ChatGPT every week.
That's
insane. The current number.
Yeah. Just
10%
insane.
of the world population, right?
Now, then what's the next stage of AI? Because there's generative that's talked about, and now a lot of people have heard references on news articles and things what's the next step in AI?
We mentioned the AI agents, right?
Yep.
So the ChatGPT has an AI assistant and 800 million people using it. I told you about agents being autonomous.
Yep.
Now, the next big thing is called the agentic AI. Agentic is a word where you're talking about the level of automation that you put it in a workflow. It's I think I can make a good comparison, easier for everybody to grasp.
Please.
Which is the autonomous vehicles, right? So we have been receiving promises that we'd have this fully autonomous car for the past, 10 to 15 years.
Right.
I think cars, the Teslas can already do a lot of stuff. I rented a Tesla in Las Vegas the beginning of this year, and it really drove most of the way. But it's not perfect. If you need to go a little bit off-road, if you have a road blockage, or if you reach protesters, which of course happened in LA in the past weeks, right?
Yep.
The car has no idea what to do and how to deal with it. So we're calling it the different levels of automation.
Okay.
With AI, it's the very same thing. You have different levels of automation, or how they call it, different levels of agency. Because agency, again, is a word that came even before technology. Agency is the permission for you to make a decision. So what's happening with generative AI is we're seeing this piece of software, this piece of technology becoming more and more powerful in the way that it can understand what we're talking about. It can crunch numbers, as you mentioned before. It can really understand a big data set, big volume of data. It can understand context if you give it access to information. So we're giving it more and more agency. Again, pilots are still piloting the planes, I hope, but they're just behind, right? They're just behind the command, because most of the flying on a plane is already done by computers. It's already part autonomously. So this is the next step of this revolution, how we're going to get Not specifically in planes. I think it's a tougher place to move, to change the needle. But companies are already implementing these agentic workflows all around.
That's just it is just so fascinating. It's funny that you bring up airplanes. I have a friend whose husband is an American Airlines 777 pilot, and we were at dinner here a couple months ago, and you talk about most of the flying is done by the plane. He actually made a statement that once he gets it off the ground, they've already programmed in the flight path and everything else into it. He goes, once I get it to 500 feet, the plane really takes over, and I don't really re-engage with flying the aircraft until we start, you're 20 miles, 30 miles out from the airport, and then I take control and bring it down. But if something would happen to the pilot, the plane can land itself. I mean, that's instrument landings and things of that nature. It is amazing how much is going on autonomously via the plane. And that's going to get nothing but smarter and smarter and smarter. You use cars, you use, our home appliances, everything seems to kind of have the ability these days to step in and be more helpful than it has been in the past. It's amazing.
By your example, you're talking to a friend and he's told you that, but you don't see airlines, you don't see the manufacturers talking about that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, when it gets public attention, it's very easy for somebody to mention the Skynet or the movie Matrix,
right,
and how dangerous it is that computers are taking over. But remember that, Brent, at the end, what you want is safer flights.
Right.
Safer,
more consistent, on time, right, better maintenance, less accidents because of all, so my business, and I didn't mean to interrupt there, but just it really resonated with me to safer flights. I was in the printing business for 36 years, and our new digital printing presses are coming with machine learning and artificial intelligence to help alleviate downtime. Service calls needed. It can be very proactive or preventative in its approach. Hey, next time the service technician comes in, the big press will notify our service department, that you need to replace this part because it's going to fail in 4 days. Come in 2 days, the customer never knows that it was going to even fail. It's just continuous operation. So convenience and safety and all those things are critical aspects of why AI is so important to our future.
Definitely. And when we start measuring performance like this, we're talking about safe flights. You mentioned about reliability of service.
Yep.
At the end, does it really matter if it's a human or a computer operating it? At the end, in the bottom line, you just want a safe flight. So this is the kind of paradigm shift which is already happening in companies, but you're not going to see that in a billboard. Companies are not going to be talking about that as the biggest and newest innovation because the public scrutiny is still very, very high.
Yeah,
but
it just takes time.
I'm seeing it happen. We mentioned healthcare. We mentioned airplanes, airlines. It's happening in every industry you can imagine. You mentioned Iowa and the agriculture revolution. It's happening all around in agriculture as well.
Yeah, to feed 8.5 billion people on the same resource allotment that we had to feed 4.5 billion people, you've got to get bigger, better, faster, better modeling, more return on acres in yield, all these things that happen. And I know you mentioned mining as well, I think, agribusiness and the mining business. How's AI working inside the mining business?
So imagine that. We're discussing humans being substituted by AI or technology or humanoid robots, for example.
Yep.
And I was at the CES in Las Vegas earlier this year.
Yep.
And the CES is an event where you can get in touch with the latest and newest inventions. I'm not talking about Apple and Microsoft. This is like the small inventors, Inspector Gadgets of the world, creating all this different, not always already working in production inventions. And I saw 3 flying vehicles that they departed and landed 150 feet flights, not very high, maybe 20 feet high.
Sure.
But they were able to showcase that the technology for flying cars is already out there. There's a lot of FAA discussions to be taken place of, and you have to discuss distribution and all that. But on the mining industry, the example that I ran into CES, and I was already able to implement, was the humanoid robots. So there were 5 different brands, 4 of them Chinese, 1 of them American, of humanoid robots. So they are a little bit shorter, maybe 4.5 feet tall. They look like a human being in the format of their body.
Yep.
But of course, they don't have a face, and they don't even have good hands yet. But on the mining industry, the humanoid robot wakes up every morning 4 a.m. before every other human being reaches the mining site, walks into the cave, into the mining
into the
site
shaft
specifically. Shaft, thank you very much for that. And once it reaches that spot, it has sensors, so it can read all the data about the toxicity,
the safety of it
in the air.
Yeah.
Yes, and if it's a safe environment for a human to operate. So the humanoid robot is not working the mine, but it's doing whatever the canary used to do.
I was just going to say the canaries are very thankful for this.
and we start with that. We start with canaries. But tell me your feeling about it, Brand. If we were able to have humanoid robots working into mines, what is more human? Having a humanoid robot doing that, or having real human beings inside a shaft?
That makes a ton of sense, and sooner or later it'll take. Mining is one of the most dangerous occupations in the world. Has been forever. I'm sure it's measured in millions of people have died, either in the mines or because of working in the mines. Coal miners with black lung and diseases and things. Being able for those things to advance, to take on the manual labor, will be the next stage that is very helpful for it. Automation is key. You can do faster, safer. There's tons of attributes for this thing. I think you've nailed it on the head a couple times in this conversation, where it just takes time for humans, for us, the warriors that we are, to accept it as common. Same thing happened with flight. When people first saw the Wright brothers on the beach trying to get in the air, they thought they were crazy, and I'd never do that. Today, there's millions of people in the air right now, tens of thousands of flights every single day, and no one imagined that and was very fearful of it. It used to be they did these what they called barnstorming tours in the U.S., where someone would show up with an airplane and 4 or 5 people would get to go up for a flight. Today, everyone's been on airplanes. So it's just the next stage in our development as a society, I think, and it's the understanding is what you're working on with your clients and your prospects. Is you've got this tool, don't be afraid of it, lean into the technology, because it'll give you a competitive advantage, both internally and externally, to help your organization and help your people.
Definitely. And when I talk again to companies and business executives, it's really clear that nobody is talking about layoffs. Actually, Brent, the scenario is the opposite. When I get to companies, what I hear they're complaining is this next generation is not as willing to work as much as the previous one. And I think that's probably true for the past 3 or 4 groups of generations. But especially at this point that we're at, people do not want to work inside mine shafts. So now, are you going to lay off the ones that already want to? It's crazy. It doesn't connect to whatever is happening. So the thing is, we need to get the people who are already on board more productive. We need to make the best of their time. We need, and now I will say it as I say in my book, Cognitive Organizations, is we need them to be able to focus on whatever human beings can do that computers cannot.
Great
I will not
analogy.
say that computers won't be able to do whatever we're doing right now. But as of right now, there's a lot of stuff that humans, in average, are better than computers. And I say in average because, of course, you can have an AI that can write music, for example. But if you compare the ability of AI to create a song to Mozart or Beethoven, of course, absolutely, there's no way you can compare that. But if you compare that to the average music being created, I'm not as sure that the computer is not doing a good work. There's been news this morning of this guy that created a new band, a rock band, and then he's got already more than 60,000 listeners, which bought their album. It was 100% created on AI. So as of average, AI is moving fast.
Well, and Hollywood's very concerned about that too, right? I mean, the actors and actresses, because CGI, right, computer graphics, was very important for all these action films, but that wasn't replacing any of the actors. I mean, a few things on Star Wars types movies and space movies where they had, different beasts and things that were computer generated, but there's a real concern about that. And what needs to happen then is different types of roles will come into play. You talk about humans being good at it, let them be good at what they're good at, and let the artificial intelligence or automation handle the things that they either don't want to do or aren't willing to do. Last year, I think it was beginning of last year, there was a strike by union members in the ports around the U.S., and it was mostly the East Coast ports. And the negotiations with these union leaders, the union focused very much on the new contract. You could not automate any jobs away. And a lot of union members were like, that's right, the union's fighting for us. We got to save these jobs. And my position mentally on that was that the union is holding back their members, because if they would embrace automation, their members wouldn't have to drive forklifts any longer. Their union members then could be people that program the forklifts and make more money because those jobs are higher skill level. The automation's coming. So either embrace it and be a part of it and gain the benefits of it, or fight it and lose out. The union wasn't doing the right thing there and saying, you can't ever automate the ports. What they needed to say is, since we're going to automate the ports in the contract, we'd like you to educate our current members on how to be able to program or run or utilize the technology. Then their pay would go up, because those are higher worth jobs, not meaning that in a derogatory standpoint at all. Just someone that is a computer programmer makes more than somebody that plugs the computer in, right? That's just how the world works. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I'm really buying into what you're saying. You need to embrace it because it's coming whether we like it or not.
Definitely, completely agree. And again, on the agriculture side, those are today some of the best jobs in the country. I'm talking about Brazil, because not only is a roaring economy, it's growing. We have a hard time with every other sector in Brazil, but agriculture is doing great. And most of the machinery used in agriculture is already at least 20 to 30% automatic. So all the operators for this machinery have to be higher skilled workers who get better pay. So this is already happening here. Of course, unions are fighting. We have to remember that unions have somehow some hidden agendas, right? That go along with whatever we think is rational. So sometimes that interferes as well. But it's very, very hard to stop. And again, Brent, once technology is out there, once it's available, once you have a large language model, for example, my company, we create tech, we do marketing. So we are a creative economy kind of business. Once that was out some 2.5, 3 years ago, at the very moment that I saw that tech, I said, this is going to change everything for us. And then I had two options. I could go and say, let's try to kill this technology, which I know is not possible, or let's embrace it, right?
Yep.
So I think we made our point. I think we do agree on that view.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. For the average person out there, there's several free AI tools out there. We talked about ChatGPT and Gemini, et cetera. Are there any others that you feel are important for the listeners to know?
Yeah, I have a list. I can send you a link, maybe if you can put it on show notes.
Yeah, I can.
With 17 different tools, of course, for different uses as
Right.
well. So, for example, Gamma for creating PowerPoint presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I show people Gamma, they will go and say, oh my God, so we don't need teachers anymore. And I said, no, man. Teachers are the people that enable learners to move forward. If they don't have to spend time creating the PowerPoint presentation, they can focus more
on teaching.
On how.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I just used that Gamma, not to interrupt you, but I had some leadership training that I led in Bangkok, Thailand here back in, when did I go there? May. And when I was writing my, it was 100 slides or something I covered over a couple days. And I did use that Gamma to look at what my content was and had it adjust and change. It didn't change the concepts. It just made the language cleaner. It used more open-minded statement and phrasing. It was very cool to interact. That was really the first time I'd interacted a lot personally with content creation through the assistant, and I was just floored. I feel I'm really a pretty good communicator, right? It's what I've done my whole life, is spoken and been in front of crowds and of course podcasts, etc. A well-rounded person. But what it was spitting out was far superior than what I was putting in, and I was just like, "This is awesome!" It was really helpful. And to you, it took my fear away from, does this sound good, right? Oh gosh, I'm self-critiquing. Instead, I just say, hey, what do you have? And you could get multiple options. If I didn't like what it had spit out the first time, I could say, try it again. And then, I was still interacting. I was making the decisions, but it was fulfilling the need for these options for me to make a final call on what I wanted the content to look like. So didn't mean to interrupt you.
Awesome show. So Gamma is one of those tools. I love Perplexity as well.
Perplexity?
People have been using Perplexity.
You
get
okay.
Perplexity. Yep. Perplexity, yes. So people have been using ChatGPT as a substitute for Google. I definitely do not recommend that, because ChatGPT will hallucinate. That's a technical term, I promise. It will sometimes create answers that based on topics or papers or judicial decisions that never existed. So it's not very grounded.
Okay.
If you want to be creative, that's beautiful. But if you really need grounded, which is what I need in my company, stuff that is grounded in reality, Perplexity does a much better job into connecting the answer to your questions to a source, to a high quality source of information. So this is something that for the past 2 years has replaced Google searches, most Google searches for me, but not ChatGPT. So Perplexity is another one that I like.
Is it just an application that you download? How do you interact with it? How do you find it?
Yeah. You can use it on a desktop computer, on a browser, internet browser, but you can also download the app for Android or iOS.
Okay, wonderful.
The other one that I mentioned earlier is Notebook LM. New way to learn. You can upload content. You can put long documents, long format documents, and then it will create the podcast for you. It creates a mind map to organize the ideas on that document as well. So this is Google's Notebook LM, another tool that I love, that I use every day as well. And if you're working with education, there's this tool called Hey Jan. Hey Jan. It's a tool that will create a video avatar of a person. You can use a real person, or you can create a character. Now, whatever you type or whatever you feed this avatar with, it will talk about it in every other language that you want, with subtitles or not, and with a different background that you want. So very good to create educational material. If you had this long PDF text nobody wants to read, now you can put it in the voice and the face of a person talking about it.
That's crazy. It was funny that you say that. Last night, I'm chairman of the board for a technology company down in Florida, and I'm putting a communication together to a customer. and I was sharing it with the president last night, and he said, it reads great. Give me a second. And then he comes back and he says, it sounds good too. And I said, sounds good. And he goes, yeah, I just used the Microsoft Voice to have it stated to me instead of me reading it, having it just see what it sounded like, you know? And I'm like, well, I've never even known such a thing was out there. I got to look that up. So there's so much that from a potential standpoint here, there's businesses that are being created. There's businesses that aren't even on a cocktail napkin yet as far as, the impetus of the idea happening. But really, the sky's the limit. You're only limited by your imagination here for how far this stuff can take us.
Definitely. And again, we have been talking about automation. We talked about the idea of the teammate, AI as a teammate.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a third layer to that conversation, which is there are new business models enabled by this technology. So it's a new way, a different way of doing business. There's this guy from Brazil who created this nutritional buddy. It's a WhatsApp contact where you can write whatever you had for breakfast, or you can send an audio message like I had 2 eggs and bacon and all that, or you can take a photo of your plate. Remember, ChatGPT understands photos. Now, it not only counts calories and proteins and carbs, it also looks at the portion size because it's a picture after all. So now this guy has more than 10,000 paying customers.
Unbelievable.
Paying $15 a month to use the tool, and his company has 2 employees. Right? So he used AI to write the code for this application. He uses GPT technology, OpenAI's technology, to be able to understand whatever each customer is eating.
Yep.
And do the calculations as well. And it's 100% WhatsApp based. You don't need to download any app. You don't need to have a login and password. It's only a WhatsApp contact.
You turn in the camera, you turn on the camera in WhatsApp and point at it, and away it goes.
Yeah, you can open up the camera, take a picture of your lunch, and that's it. It already knows what you've eaten. And then you're getting nutritional feedback, and it can connect to your smartwatch. So if you're cycling or if you're trekking or running, it can also feed the information on your exercise. So now you have an exercise and nutritional buddy inside a WhatsApp content. So this is 100% a business model that was enabled by the existence of generative AI. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see more and more of that.
That is just incredible. You can't even, I'm an older, well, not older guy, I'm 57 years old, but my mind doesn't even start to go down those lines. Thank goodness there's these young people that are coming in to embrace these new ideas. Just like my parents didn't have any idea around, like my mom's going to be 96 years old. She has no email. She's never owned a laptop. She has a flip phone. She doesn't want any interaction with that because her comfort level, I'm far more comfortable with that technology and more comfortable with the internet. Now the next generations are going to be more comfortable with this, and then they will be the old folks in 30, 40 years, and who knows what we're doing at that point. We'll be beaming people up, like Star Trek, I suppose, at that point. But it's just amazing what's going on here. Where do you see the most pushback from customers? You're calling on a lot of people. Is it fear-based? They don't know. They're so uncomfortable or insecure in the technology that they don't want to engage? Or what do you find the biggest pushback from corporations on the technology?
Yeah, I think corporations, when you talk to the board, when you talk to the C-level, I think everybody's already on board in a sense that they understand that's unavoidable. It's trying to fight something that will generate greater output, greater profits for the company itself. So on that level, I think it's already in. But of course, I'm doing a lot of in-company trainings and talking to companies in every other sector and at lots of different sectors. And what I see from the people that are actually doing the job is that their opinion is based on two major points. The first one being, and it's funny but it's true, sci-fi. So the business card for AI. Maybe it should change names because the business card for AI is not very good. 1968, 2001 Space Odyssey,
Oh
Stanley
yeah.
Kubrick.
Oh yeah.
90s, we had the
Yeah, that's right.
Terminator. How? Yeah, you remember
You got
that,
to be a
of
certain
course.
age to
How?
remember that. I'm pulling out my age there. Hal. That's right.
That's it. And Hal decided that the human crew was not important.
That's
They were
right.
going to mess up with its plan. So, boom, killed everybody. Then you go to the 90s. You have the Terminator and you have Matrix. So now either you have a Skynet, this large network of
Yep.
humanoid
Yep.
robots that really want humanity out of it,
Yep.
or you have, it's odd to say, but human fetus generating energy so this network of AI could work, something related to that. And then they created the stimulation for human beings to be a part of, so they are kept alive. So now I get to a company and say, hey guys, how about we get some AI here? And then people, right? It's an odd feeling. So AI, not a good business card. This is one big part of the problem. And the second one is definitely news outlets. Everything the media talks about AI is either it's going to kill jobs, so everybody's going to run out of job. I'm taking your job away from you. Or people are getting dumber, so we're not going to have our brains working anymore. We're going to lose our ability to think and create and all that. So once you have these two components working together, so you're going to lose your job and you're going to be more stupid. Again, not a good invitation. So what we have been talking about in this past half an hour, 40 minutes, that's what I'm talking to companies, to people inside companies all around the world, to get them close to the tech so they understand the benefits and all the possibilities, but also again, it's important to mention the limitations. It's not perfect. Try to ask ChatGPT to count how many characters there is in this message. Try to ask ChatGPT to talk about creating new information, stuff that doesn't exist, to really be creative. And then you're going to really fast understand the limits.
There are limits, yeah. Because they are really sourcing information that humans have put together already, right? It's going out and it's using very extravagant searching and compiling of information to validate, to cross-reference, etc. So the old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? It's got to have good data sources for it to come up. That's what you were talking about earlier, where you may get some bad information out of a chat GPT or something of that nature that isn't necessarily real. Well, there's no doubt. This is so intriguing. We could go on for days on this, and maybe a secondary visit would be something that we can talk about, because I'm sure the listeners are starting to salivate over this too. There's no doubt it's coming. It's here. It's not coming. It's no doubt that stronger utilization is going to be coming for decades to come. When you joined the show today, I'm sure there were a few things that you wanted to make sure we touched on. We touched on your book. I want you to give people ways in which they can contact you and your organization to see more about what you're doing, how they can get your book, etc. But is there anything that you wanted to make sure that the listeners heard today or captured out of today's show that you want to make sure we get covered?
I think the main message was probably the first one that we touched on, which is get close to it. OpenAI or Microsoft or Google, they're not paying me anything to say that.
Right.
It's really because as a business owner, as a management professional, once I started getting in contact with this tech and really started using it, I got, I think, the most precious resource you can imagine back, which is my time. And again, Brent, I think everybody's trying to talk about how AI is going to kill every job out there, but I don't think that's the right thing we should be thinking about.
I don't think so either.
If you have a piece of tech that can give you back, and this is backed by first scientific papers on the topic, that it can gives you back 20 to 40% of your time. I'm talking about 20 to 40% increase in productivity. I'm telling you that if you work for 5 days a week, it's giving you back 1 or 2 days. I think the most important question is, what are you going to do with those 2 days you get back?
That's where the benefit comes.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
More time with your family. You're gonna create stuff that you haven't created before. I've written 3 books already and produced a documentary about one of my ancestors. So that's what I have been doing with my
That's great.
extra time, right? So that's where I think we should focus, and not it's going to kill everyone's jobs.
Oh, it's great input and it's great information. Is there a way for people to contact you or find your book, Cognitive Organizations?
Yeah, sure. The book is available on Amazon.com. I've created a small website, cognitiveorganizations.com, and there's a contact form right there.
Okay.
I also use social media, so people can connect with me on Instagram. The profile is the Kenneth Correa, or on X. It used to be called Twitter.
Twitter, yep.
They can find me as Kenneth Correa.
That's wonderful. Well, Kenneth Correa, thank you so much. To the listeners out there of the Leadership Lounge, embrace what you hate, embrace what you're fearful of, and it'll diminish, and then you can gain the benefits. If you take these words of advice, it'll lead to awesome outputs, and then you can keep that shit up. I always say that at the end of the shows, keep that good stuff up. And what a great visit, Kenneth. I appreciate you coming on the show so much. Can't thank you enough for the visit, and I hope you have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ben. It was a pleasure being with you for this past hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you.